Chapter 1575 Serial Felon. Chapter 1575 Serial Felon. Author's Note. Unedited chapter. Miss Amy's projection seemed to pause, as if considering her words carefully. I am right where I need to be, Gustav. My journey has led me to a place where I can best assist you from afar. We will see each other soon. Gustav's brow furrowed in concern. But why the secrecy? What's happening? Miss Amy's eyes softened. There are forces at play that require careful navigation. You must trust me, as you always have. Remain focused. Gustav nodded reluctantly. All right, Miss Amy. I just wish I knew more. Miss Amy's projection began to fade slightly, her form becoming more ethereal. You will, in time. For now, rest and regain your strength. You're almost there. Gustav watched as her projection vanished, leaving him alone in the chamber. He took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling over him. Despite her assurance, he still felt unease. He exited the chamber and made his way to the adjacent quarters where Stark was resting. The spacious room was filled with an array of food and comfortable seating areas. Stark looked up as Gustav entered, a concerned expression on his face. How did it go? Stark asked, setting aside a plate of fruit. Gustav sighed, collapsing into a chair. I'm getting closer. Miss Amy says I will be ready once I'm able to maintain it for up to 30 minutes. Stark nodded. You'll get there. Gustav leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Thanks, Stark. I appreciate the support, but there's something else bothering me. Miss Amy won't tell me where she is or why she's hiding. Stark frowned. I noticed that as well. Do you think something is up? Gustav's eyes narrowed. I am 100% sure something is up, but she doesn't want me to know. She did say we'll see each other soon, and that I just have to trust her. Stark leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Maybe you do. I mean, she is the most powerful person we know, right? Gustav nodded while rubbing his temples. That is true. The two friends settled into a companionable silence for a bit as Gustav closed his eyes. He let his mind drift, focusing on the connection between his soul, mental form, and body. He could still feel the echo of the golden body within him. Gustav found himself in the midst of a crumbling city, buildings shattered and fires raging all around. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds of ash and smoke. The air was thick with the stench of destruction and despair. Before him, Angie stood with her form half black and half white. Horns protruded from her forehead in a grotesque, upside-down fashion. Her eyes burned with an intensity that Gustav had never seen before. She was locked in a fierce battle with Jack, the world's most powerful mixed blood. Jack's aura radiated with pure, unbridled power that caused the world to tremble as he engaged her. With a swift and deadly motion, Angie suddenly severed Jack in two, her blade cutting through him like a knife through butter. At this moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as Jack's body fell to the ground in pieces, and an overwhelming sense of panic spread through the surroundings. The destruction around them intensified, and Gustav's heart pounded in his chest. Suddenly, Angie's eyes locked onto his, and she moved with lightning speed. Before Gustav could react, she was upon him and her blade pierced his chest. He felt a searing pain as the blade drove deep, and a black hole began to form around the wound, pulling everything into its abyss. Gustav suddenly jolted awake. His breath came in ragged gasps as he sat up. His body was covered in a cold sweat. He rarely had dreams, but whenever he did, it always felt so real. This time was more real than any other. He still felt a slight pain in his chest where the blow from Angie's blade had struck. He couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered. What kind of dream was that? He muttered to himself, trying to make sense of it. After a few moments of contemplation, Gustav decided to put the unsettling dream out of his mind and focus on his training. He needed to focus on his aim, sustaining the three in one golden body for 30 minutes. With renewed determination, he began his meditation. Meanwhile, in the cold expanse of outer space above Earth, Indrik, Eldris, and Falco piloted Gustav's spacecraft towards their home planet. The vessel cut through the void like a blade as its engines thrummed softly. The barrier around Earth solidified and visibly appeared at this moment as a transmission crackled through the ship's comm system. This is MBO Space Control. Identify yourselves and prepare for a scan. Understood, Eldris replied, his voice calm and steady. This is the vessel belonging to Exploration Team F number 2110, carrying 3 passengers. Indrik adjusted his disguise, a holographic mask that altered his features. We can't afford to be recognized, especially me, he said, his voice low. They know I'm allied with Gustav, so we could be in serious trouble. Falco nodded. Just stay calm and let Eldris handle the communications. We'll be fine. The ship was soon bathed in a soft blue light as it got scanned. A few tense moments passed as the MBO officers conducted their scan. Finally, the transmission resumed. Scan complete. You are cleared for entry, the officer said. Proceed to the designated landing zone. Thank you, Control. Proceeding now, Eldris responded. The spacecraft descended smoothly through the atmosphere, breaking through the cloud cover to reveal the sprawling cityscape below. They navigated towards the designated landing zone, a secure facility in the outskirts of Plankton City. As the ship touched down, Indrik adjusted his disguise once more, ensuring it was secure. Let's hope this works, he muttered. The landing ramp lowered, and the trio stepped out into the bustling facility. MBO officers and personnel moved about, their attention focused on their duties. Eldris and Falco walked confidently, while Indrik did his best to blend in, his holographic disguise altering his appearance to that of an ordinary civilian. Welcome back to Earth, an officer greeted them, his tone professional but friendly. Please follow the protocols, and you'll be cleared to enter the city. They nodded and moved through the facility, following the necessary procedures. After a thorough check, they were given the green light to proceed. As they exited the facility, the city spread out before them. Now what? Falco asked, glancing at Eldris. We need to regroup back at EES and figure out our next steps, Eldris replied. We can't risk being seen too much, especially with Indrik's situation. Indrik nodded in agreement. Let's move quickly. They navigated the vibrant, futuristic metropolis that thrived on the cutting edge of technology. Hovercars zipped through the air on designated pathways, and the sidewalks were bustling with citizens as well as holographic circles. Soon the trio finally arrived in front of a building. As they approached EES apartment, which was perched on the 120th floor of a sleek, glass-walled building, he could already sense their approach. He immediately welcomed them at the door with an expression of disbelief. Falco, you little son of a gun, come here, he exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace his long-lost friend. Falco grinned, hugging E tightly. It's good to see you too, E. It's been way too long. Eldris and Indrik watched with smiles on their faces as they reunited. Once inside, the group settled into the spacious living area, which boasted floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Plankton City. Tell me everything, E said, his eyes filled with concern as he looked at all 3 of them. Why are you back on Earth and without Gustav? Eldris nodded with a serious expression. Ria's been captured by the Alliance Corps. They're using him as bait to lure Gustav out. EES face fell. I am aware of that and trying to do something about it. He took a deep breath. You just missed Elevera. She left on an off-planet mission to find the true head of the Gustavo Alliance. Elevera's on a Gustavo Alliance-related mission? Indrik asked with an intrigued expression. EE nodded. She's following a lead that took her to the Outer Rim. She believes the real leader of the Gustavo Alliance might be hiding there. It's risky, but we're determined to find out the truth so we can finally clear Gustav of all charges. Falco's brow furrowed. But she might be a while, and it's just a lead, so it isn't guaranteed. We still need to figure out how to rescue Ria. A breakout might be our only option. E sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Things are tense between the Alliance and Earth right now. The MBO wanted to move Ria to Earth, but the Alliance refused. There are even rumors that the MBO might try to take Ria by force. Chapter 1576, Banishing the Deities. Chapter 1576, Banishing the Deities. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Karis, tell me where the Ryan is, he demanded, his voice echoing slightly in the memory-filled void. Karis lifted her weary eyes to meet his, a spark of defiance still burning within. I can't tell you, Thalos. I won't let you destroy what I've planned. The lost frustration was palpable, but he masked it quickly and tried a different angle. Why deny me of my share? This was never the plan, so stop being selfish. Karis shook her head slowly, her voice soft but firm. The Nereus sector cursed me. It made me a criminal. I blame this place for the loss of my child. I won't let anyone else suffer as I have. What I'm doing with the Ryan will make sure nothing like this is repeated. Just leave the Nereus sector for your own sake. Thalos scoffed as his patience wore thin. Tell me where the Ryan is, Karis. This is not a game. Her resolve hardened as she repeated her refusal. No, Thalos. I must finish what I started. At that moment, Thalos burst into laughter, a sound that seemed jarringly out of place in the somber atmosphere. Karis stared at him, confusion and surprise written across her face. Thalos, catching his breath, waved his hand dismissively. I don't need you to tell me, Karis. Look around you. As he spoke, the memories swirling around them began to shift. The images of past tragedies and struggles faded, replaced by more recent memories. Karis watched, horror-struck, as scenes of her arrival in the Nereus sector with the Ryan played out around them. The memories showed where she had headed, whom she had contacted, and even where she had hidden the Ryan, all displayed vividly in the shimmering dimension. Karis' eyes widened with realization and dread. How? The lost smile was thin and cold. You see, Karis, the mind, no matter how strong, starts to crack under constant reliving of grief. It opens doors and makes it easy to navigate to the memories I want to see. Your plan, your contacts, the Ryan's location, I know it all now. Karis felt a chill run down her spine as the implications of the lost words sank in. Her last defense had been breached, her secrets laid bare not by torture or threats, but by her memories. Thalos continued, his voice now a whisper that seemed to fill the space. You thought you could outsmart everyone, didn't you? Use the Ryan to your satisfaction? But you're just a pawn, Karis. And now, I own the board. Karis, now realizing the extent of her vulnerability, felt a mixture of anger and desperation. You think you've won, Thalos? Thalos nodded slowly, his expression serious. Yes, I have. And I will. The Ryan will be mine, and with it, I will choose to do whatever I please. As the revelation hung heavy between them, Karis' mind raced for solutions, ways to salvage her plan. But with every option seeming to slip through her fingers, her situation felt increasingly hopeless. Thalos, satisfied with the shock and defeat on Karis' face, began to fade from the dimension, his parting words echoing around her, Goodbye, Karis. Through the intricate and exclusive capabilities of the life signs tracking, Gustav had a unique vantage point. Only he could see the lost actions within the dimension of memories, witnessing the revelation of the Ryan's location. Without hesitation, Gustav called everyone together for the revelation. I have the location of the Ryan, Gustav announced, his voice carrying a grave urgency. Thalos just extracted the information from Karis' memories. We need to move now. He'll be heading there, and if he retrieves the Ryan before us, we're looking at a potential catastrophe. The Triton operatives mobilized instantly, equipment and weapons holstered as coordinative commands echoed through the room. The location, an industrial complex on the edge of the Nereus sector, was now their target. The complex was a labyrinth of abandoned machinery and towering storage tanks, casting long shadows in the twilight that blanketed the area. As the team approached the site, the surrounding environment grew increasingly hostile. The complex was guarded by figures cloaked in the shadows, their faces obscured by hoods and masks. They were allies of Karis, part of the network she had relied on to keep the Ryan hidden. The Triton guards took point, engaging the shadowy figures with precision. Laser blasts illuminated the dim surroundings in stark bursts of light as the guards advanced, using their supernatural ability dampener to handle the foes. Secure the perimeter, shouted one of the lead guards, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek. The team worked systematically, cornering the defenders who were quickly overwhelmed by the sudden and well-orchestrated assault. Meanwhile, Gustav and a small contingent pushed deeper into the complex. The heart of the industrial maze was a massive, cavernous room where the Ryan was said to be located. As they entered, the sight that greeted them was otherworldly. The Ryan itself was not a discrete object but appeared as a complex assembly of crystalline structures fused into the infrastructure of the building. It pulsed with a glowing energy, the light it emitted growing steadily intense. "It's charging up," Gustav observed, his expression tense as he surveyed the setup. "We can't just pull it out. It's integrated into the sector's power grid by the looks of it. Removing it might be impossible without the energy signature of the person who activated it." The operatives fanned out, securing the room as they contacted their base for technical support. "We need options here," they reported through comlinks, while their gazes were fixed on the pulsating Ryan. Before further strategies could be discussed, a commotion at the entrance signaled a new development. Delos burst into the vicinity, his face a mask of shock and fury as he beheld the scene before him. His plan to retrieve the Ryan unchallenged had clearly unraveled. He spun on his heel to retreat, but Gustav appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Going somewhere?" Gustav's voice was cool, calm, and ominously quiet. Delos reached into his jacket, his hand closing around another reflective, mirror-like device. But before he could use it, Gustav was upon him. With a swift move, he disarmed Delos and pinned him against a wall. "You're not escaping this time, Delos. Not with the Ryan. Not with anything," Gustav stated firmly, the grip on his adversary unyielding. Delos, caught and deflated, his eyes darted around the room, taking in the array of Triton operatives that had already surrounded him. "How did you?" He couldn't believe his eyes. They really got to the Ryan before him, but he could sense that something was wrong. Gustav's eyes narrowed as he turned to the Triton guards. "Keep him secured. I'm going to figure out how to neutralize the Ryan without causing damage to the sector." A few minutes later, Gustav stood before the Ryan, his brow furrowed in concentration. The crystalline structure pulsed with an ominous glow. Gustav, with determined precision, attempted various methods to dislodge the Ryan, but each attempt was met with failure. The mineral remained unyieldingly fused to its surroundings. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Officer Iram called upon Vlade Zenith for his assistance. Zenith, whose past actions had indirectly contributed to the current crisis, approached the Ryan with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. As they inspected the setup together, Zenith's knowledge proved invaluable. "It looks like it's user-locked, a mineral with binding sentience," Zenith observed, examining the interfaces that linked the Ryan to the infrastructure. "Only the person who activated it can deactivate it. This thing is bonded to Karis." Gustav processed the information. "So, we need Karis to shut it down." Zenith nodded grimly. "Yes. If that energy is released, it'll obliterate everything. The entire Nereus sector, gone. There's too much power being accumulated. No one would survive, and while my men and I can escape, it is impossible to evacuate millions in time." Regret washed over Zenith's features as he considered the implications of his past betrayals. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't turned on Karis, none of this would be happening. I wish there was something I could do now." "There might be something you can do, Zenith. Help convince Karis to deactivate the Ryan," Gustav voiced before turning away. Leaving Zenith to ponder his role in the unfolding disaster, Gustav strode with purpose toward the area where the Los was being held. The Los looked up as Gustav approached, his expression defiant yet curious about the intentions of his captor. "The Los, we need Karis to deactivate the Ryan. It's linked to her, and she's the only one who can shut it down safely," Gustav explained, his tone commanding yet edged with a plea for cooperation. The Los scoffed, his skepticism clear. "And why would I do that? What's in it for me?" Gustav met his gaze steadily. "The Los, if that mineral goes off, you'll die along with everyone else. This isn't about deals or leverage anymore. It's about survival." Perhaps dying isn't such a bad option so long as that treacherous bitch gets to join in," Delos spat out. His disdain for Karis was evident in his sneer. Chapter 1577 I Know What I Must Do. Chapter 1577 I Know What I Must Do. Author's note. Unedited chapter. I am not risking the safety of Earth on the hope that this thing will stay captured. It is even more powerful than I remember. Jack waved Gustav off with a gentle yet firm shove. I can't let you kill her, Gustav stated with a strong tone. Kid, if you know what is good for you, leave now. Jack already had enough of Gustav's interference. I will consider you an enemy if you disrupt one more time, he added with a stern look. I can't do that. Gustav's eyes twinkled with a crimson glow as he slowly began to unleash his energy. Jack was immediately taken aback as he felt the steaming presence ripple through the surroundings. I see. You're no ordinary person, are you? Jack felt it made sense since Gustav had appeared before him so suddenly and was even flying. I don't want her dead. Flumsh, heavy winds began spreading about the surroundings as both their energies clashed, just like that of Jack and Angie's at the time. Jack discovered that this unknown person was a mixed blood, and they were not in any way weak. His eyes squinted as he twirls his fingers, prepared to use a very powerful ability. Even though the space seal construct only lasts for 2 seconds, not a single life form on Earth will be capable of movement. I will use that brief time to end both their lives, Jack decided internally. Careful. He is going for the kill. It will be fine. I am not so helpless that a single attack will be able to end my life, even though he is the strongest mixed blood. Gustav responded internally as he prepared to use a powerful ability as well. About that. The system seemed like it was going to inform him about something when an unexpected situation suddenly occurred. Angie, whose figure was a mangled mess within the space construct Jack created, suddenly glared at Gustav's direction and then back at Jack. Her eyes turned bloodshot as she exploded forth with a wave of dark energy. Boom. Both Jack and Gustav were shocked as the wave swept across hundreds of miles, causing great destruction. Jack had surrounded himself and a few other structures around in his constructs to avoid accidents, but while Gustav seemed to have been consumed by the destruction. Jack couldn't confirm since he suddenly had his plate full again. He didn't even have the time to lament as Angie came at him with unbridled ferocity. Boom, boom. Sounds akin to thunderclaps rang out as they clashed repeatedly. As the visibility of a particular area returned to normal, Gustav's figure could be spotted and scathed from the previous encounter. Gustav watched from a distance with a look of skepticism. As Angie and Jack exchanged blows, the ground beneath them shattered, sending shockwaves across the icy region. Angie's inverted horn emitted beams of dark energy that Jack narrowly dodged, while Jack's fists glowed with a radiant light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. I should have ended this when I had the chance, Jack growled in frustration. Angie remained silent with an unchanging expression. Another blade materialized in her hand at this moment, causing the surroundings to twist and turn. It seemed even more powerful than the previous one. Angie proceeded to swing her dark blade, and a rift opened in the air, tearing through the very fabric of reality. Jack narrowly avoided the attack as the rift closed behind him with a violent snap. Gustav knew he couldn't wait any longer. Summoning all his strength, he propelled himself forward, his form blurring as he moved at lightning speed. He appeared between Angie and Jack with his arms outstretched to block their attacks. Stop! Gustav shouted, his voice echoing through the frozen landscape. Both Angie and Jack paused, their eyes widening in surprise at the sudden appearance of Gustav. For a brief moment, there was silence as the three of them stood in a tense standoff. He managed to stop my hand? Who is this kid? Jack wondered internally. Angie, on the other hand, one couldn't tell what she was thinking, or if she was even thinking at all. Angie, it's me, Gustav said, his voice softening. You can stop this now. It doesn't have to get any worse. Jack's eyes narrowed as he looked at Gustav. How do you know her? You are clearly a mixed blood, he asked with a cautious tone. She's my friend, but something has happened to her. She needs help. Still wanting to hide his identity, Gustav could only say this much. Angie's expression hardened. She remained silent, but her grip on the dark blade tightened. Angie, please, don't give him more reasons to end you. Whatever this is. We can fix it, Gustav pleaded, his voice filled with desperation. For a moment, It seemed like Angie hesitated as her eyes flickered with uncertainty. But then her expression hardened again, and she lashed out with a powerful strike aimed at Gustav. Gustav barely managed to dodge as his eyes widened in shock. Angie, no. Jack took advantage of the momentary distraction and charged at Angie as his fists glowed with radiant energy. She is a threat. I need to neutralize her, he said, his voice cold and determined. No, Gustav shouted and moved to intercept Jack. The three of them clashed, their powers creating a blinding display of light and darkness. Gustav found himself torn between trying to protect Angie and stopping Jack from harming her, while also trying to stop her as well. While in their midst, both Angie and Jack lunged at him simultaneously. Their combined assault was overwhelming, and despite using multiple abilities to defend himself, Gustav found himself struggling to keep up. His eyes darted like an arrow, following but barely deflecting their attacks that were continuously being sent out at a speed that a beta-ranked mixed blood would be unable to handle. Gustav's perception followed through as two powerful fists drove forward from both sides. He had no choice but to parry both attacks as his body got covered completely in iron silk upon collision. Ugh! Gustav grunted as he was sent flying across the entire region, crashing through buildings and leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. The force of the impact rattled his bones as blood trailed from the side of his lips, but he quickly recovered. Meanwhile, Angie and Jack had focused on battling each other again since Gustav was momentarily out of the picture. Jack used his construct abilities to teleport massive asteroids from space, hurling them at Angie with deadly precision. Angie, with her incredible speed and agility, effortlessly deflected the asteroids with her dark blade, slicing through them as if they were made of paper. The ground trembled with each collision, and the sky lit up with bursts of energy as their attacks clashed. Gustav watched from a distance, his mind racing. He knew he had to do something to stop this madness, but he was hesitant to use the one ability that could undoubtedly put a pause to the ongoing situation: cosmic superiority. Unfortunately, Gustav knew that using cosmic superiority would mean revealing his true identity. Jack and the rest of the world would no doubt identify him, since there was only a single Earthling who had achieved cosmic superiority. Gustav clenched his fists as his eyes narrowed with resolve. I have no choice, he muttered to himself. Connecting to the base of his core, Gustav activated his cosmic superiority. A glowing cross appeared in his pupils as red-pinkish energy spread from him, cascading across the world. The sheer force of his power caused all living things to pause their actions and drop to their knees in reverence. Jack felt the overwhelming pressure and tried to fight against it. Is this? He gasped, struggling to stay in the air as his body trembled. His mind clicked as he recalled the only person on Earth capable of such power. Gustav, it has to be you, Jack realized, gritting his teeth. Gustav didn't say a word in response. Instead, he stared at Jack with an apologetic expression. Despite his best efforts, Jack eventually succumbed to the power and fell to his knees. The realization that Gustav was behind this filled him with an indescribable tension. However, Gustav's plan hit a major snag. Angie was completely unaffected by the power of cosmic superiority. She moved with an unchanging expression. How are you able to move? Gustav's eyes widened in disbelief. Although Gustav knew his cosmic superiority had been resisted by beings far above his level of strength, this was years back. He was way more stronger now, and even Jack was unable to withstand it. So how? How was Angie unaffected? Gustav couldn't wrap his head around this. Angie didn't respond. Instead, she raised her dark blade and lunged at Gustav with blinding speed. Gustav barely had time to react, his cosmic energy flaring as he deflected the attack with a powerful cross-shaped barrier. Angie, stop! Gustav shouted as his voice echoed through the chaos. Chapter 1578, The Path of Dominance. Chapter 1578, The Path of Dominance. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Gustav stepped forward. Thank you, Celestial. I am Gustav, and this is Stark. We seek my master, Miss Amy. Gasps could be heard in the environment as the creatures stared at Gustav with reverence. Every single one of their faces held a knowing look, but Gustav couldn't place his thumb on what the reason was. Lord Gustav of Earth and his friend, you are very much welcome. Salethiel bowed alongside the others in the surroundings. Gustav expressed his confusion. Our Creator has told us so much about you. To grace us with your presence, we are honored. Salethiel voiced in reverence once more. Is Miss Amy here? Stark questioned from the side. Our Creator's presence is all around us, in the essence of Agon, but she resides not within these walls at this moment. Her current location is known only to a few. However, I can guide you to the message she left behind for you, Lord Gustav. Gustav and Stark exchanged a glance, their hope renewed by Salethiel's words. Please lead the way, Gustav voiced. Salethiel nodded gracefully and turned, leading them into the temple. The interior was as breathtaking as the exterior, with vaulted ceilings that arched overhead like the canopy of a vast forest. The walls were lined with tablets and scrolls, each emitting a soft glow, bathing the chamber in a warm, golden light. As they walked, Salethiel explained, these archives contain the chronicles of Agon's creation and evolution, the philosophies of Miss Amy's design, and the prophecies of future paths. Here, every decision, every creation is recorded and reflected upon. Stark looked around in awe, his eyes wide with the scale of knowledge preserved within the temple. Incredible, Stark mumbled. Miss Amy sure got busy since the last time I was here. As Gustav and Stark followed Salethiel deeper into the temple, the atmosphere grew heavier with the scent of ancient incense and the murmur of distant chants. It almost felt like the planet had been in existence for ages when that was far from the case. The Guardian led them to a spiraling staircase that seemed to ascend endlessly into the shadows of the temple's highest spire. From here on out is a restricted area. Lord Gustav, the path forward is yours to open. With a gesture of farewell, Salethiel stepped back, leaving them before a towering wall adorned with intricate carvings that depicted the display of stars, planets, and ethereal beings woven into the stone. Stark, looking uncertain, whispered, "What now? How are we to go from here?" Gustav approached the wall, reaching out tentatively. As his fingers brushed the cold stone, the carvings began to glow softly, pulsing with a gentle light. Then, with a rumble that echoed through the vast chamber, the wall parted, revealing a passage bathed in a celestial light. Let's see where this leads. Gustav motioned for Stark to follow. They stepped through the opening into a space that was both majestic and mythical. The chamber beyond was a vast dome, its walls lined with murals that seemed to move subtly, as if alive. In the center of the room floated a giant orb, pulsating with an inner light that grew brighter as they approached. As they neared, the orb transformed. It reshaped itself into a projection of Miss Amy, so lifelike and detailed that it could take anyone's breath away. Her grayish hair cascaded down her shoulders, flowing onto the floor, framing her extremely beautiful face. Her figure was draped in a long white gown that accentuated her ethereal presence and yet couldn't hide her glamorous curves. "Hey, kiddo." Her voice filled the chamber, warm and familiar. "If you're seeing this, then you made it. I won't be in Agon anymore by the time you get here." Gustav and Stark stood transfixed as she continued, her image flickering like a candle in the wind. "After my return from the intergalactic ISOP, a mysterious visitor came to me. They had a tablet with them and gave me a set of instructions about you, Gustav." Stark glanced at Gustav, his face etched with curiosity and concern, but Gustav's eyes were locked on the projection, absorbing every word. "A tablet? That sounds like..." Gustav recalled a certain occurrence back on planet Gohatark while focusing on Miss Amy's next words. This visitor, they knew things, Gustav. Things about specific points in time relating to the challenges we are to face. The instructions were clear. I had to leave Agon to make some changes, but I ensured that when you arrived, you'd find what you need. The projection paused as if giving them a moment to digest the information. "I've set in motion events that will lead you to the answers you seek." As the projection of Miss Amy faded away, the environment around Gustav and Stark began to warp and change. The once majestic, temple-like space transformed dramatically into a vast, open chamber that appeared almost virtual, its boundaries stretching into a blurred horizon. The entrance through which they had arrived disappeared, sealing them inside the newly formed arena. In the center of the chamber, a massive statue materialized, rivaling the size of the Statue of Liberty. Its features were stern and imposing, with eyes that glowed a deep, fiery red and a mouth poised as if ready to unleash fury. Miss Amy's voice echoed, "Good luck, kiddo." Before Gustav could respond, her presence vanished completely, leaving only her final words echoing through the space. Stark, looking around bewildered, turned to Gustav. "What now? This looks like some kind of trial." Before Gustav could reply, the air tensed with a palpable charge, a hum of energy that grew in intensity. Despite being cooked, Gustav's skin was starting to regenerate. Unfortunately, the statue's relentless assault didn't pause, and it became clear that physical attacks were futile. "What do we do, Gustav?" Stark inquired with a deeper baritone. His voice had gone through some changes after his transformation. "We have to figure out the motive behind this trial," Gustav voiced in response while his face displayed a contemplative expression. "Is that before or after we've been burnt to a crisp?" Chapter 1579, Fractured Seal. Chapter 1579, Fractured Seal. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Angie was expecting Jack to be here, so she didn't understand why he was running late, and now the trial was about to begin. The chief judge was an elderly woman with a regal bearing and flowing white robes. She proceeded to call the court to order. Her voice echoed through the hall, commanding immediate silence. "Order in the court," she announced, her tone firm. "We are here today to address the charges against Gustav Crimson. The prosecution may begin." The lead prosecutor, a sharp-featured man with a calculating gaze, stood and approached the front. His name was Varen Kess, known for his ruthlessness in the courtroom. He wore a black suit that contrasted starkly with his pale skin, and his eyes glittered with a cold, determined light. "Members of the court, esteemed panel, and citizens of the Alliance," he began, his voice carrying an air of authority. "We are gathered here to seek justice for the countless lives affected by Gustav Crimson. He stands accused of heinous crimes that have brought turmoil to our universe. Today, we will present evidence that will leave no doubt about his guilt." He gestured towards the tube containing Gustav. "Look at the man before you. Once a hero, now a symbol of destruction. We must hold him accountable for his actions." The crowd murmured in agreement as doubts of Gustav's innocence rippled through the hall. Varen Kess continued, detailing the accusations against Gustav with a meticulous, almost cruel precision. He painted a picture of a man whose powers had led to chaos and death, emphasizing the destruction of planet Ozius and other incidents that had been attributed to Gustav. Jack floated in the outer atmosphere of Earth, surrounded by a chaotic melee of spacecraft and assailants. His body glowed with blue energy as he moved with devastating intensity. Blasts of energy erupted around him as he ripped through the enemy ranks with unparalleled power. He spun in midair, dodging a barrage of powerful bolts, and retaliated with a devastating wave of force that disintegrated a nearby spacecraft. "Where did these guys come from?" Jack muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the surroundings. All he knew was that when he was about to head for Gustav's trial, the MBO higher-ups had contacted him. They informed him of a threat in Earth's outer atmosphere that needed immediate attention. No further information was provided, just that these were people with nefarious intentions. They could have sent anyone else, Jack thought, effortlessly deflecting an energy beam with a flick of his wrist. He punched through the hull of another ship, sending it spiraling into the void. Why me and why now? His suspicion grew with every attack he parried. The timing was too perfect. This has to be a delay tactic, he mused, realizing the MBO's ploy. They knew he was on Gustav's side, and by keeping him occupied, they ensured he missed the trial. Everyone knew that Jack was someone who followed the rules and obeyed commands, so this was a tactic that was most likely to work. "Nice try," Jack said aloud with a growl of determination. "But you can only delay me, not stop me." As if responding to his thoughts, the assailants intensified their assault. A group of them, humanoid and beast alike, converged their powers, combining their abilities into a massive net of energy. The net crackled with ominous power as it hurtled toward Jack. Before he could react, the net ensnared him, the energy tendrils wrapping tightly around his form. Jack struggled against the binding force, his muscles straining as he tried to break free. "Got you now." One of the assailants, who was a reptilian figure, sneered with glowing red eyes. "Let's see how powerful you really are." Jack's eyes blazed with fury. "You think this will hold me?" he roared, his voice echoing through the void. With a surge of raw power, he pushed against the net while the energy around him flared brighter. The net tightened in response, as if it was absorbing energy from him. "It's not just about strength," another assailant, who happened to be a mixed blood with cybernetic looks, voiced. Varen Kess stood at the center of the courtroom, his presence commanding and his voice steady. He had already detailed a long list of accusations against Gustav, but he wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, Gustav Crimson did not turn himself in when he was accused. Instead, he eluded the pursuit of the MBO for over a year. This in itself is also a crime. Gasps and murmurs echoed through the hall. Angie clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. She exchanged worried glances with Eldris and E. Each of them felt the weight of the accusations piling up against Gustav. Varen Kess wasn't finished. In addition, Gustav's actions have led to numerous confrontations with the Alliance. He has been responsible for the destruction of several Alliance fleets and the deaths of both MBO officers and Alliance Corps members who were simply doing their duty. Gustav's defense lawyer, a seasoned advocate, Jareth Cole, stood up. "Objection, Your Honor," he called out. "These claims are exaggerated and lack proper evidence." The judge banged her gavel. "Overruled. Mr. Kess, continue." Varen Kess smirked. "Thank you, Your Honor." Not only did Gustav wreak havoc in space, but just weeks ago, he attempted to destroy Earth itself. Were it not for the intervention of Jack, the world's strongest, who then took Gustav into custody, we would not be here today. The hall erupted in a combination of gasps and murmurs. People leaned toward each other, whispering in disbelief. Jareth Cole rose to his feet once more. "Objection, Your Honor. This is a blatant lie. Jack can testify to the truth." Varen Kess turned towards her with a triumphant smile. "Then let's call upon Jack to testify," he said with his tone dripping in confidence. He looked towards the judge. "Your Honor, I request that Jack be brought forward to verify these claims." The judge nodded. "Agreed. Please bring Jack forward." Everyone in the hall turned expectantly towards the entrance, but Jack was nowhere to be found. An uneasy silence settled over the room. Angie's heart pounded in her chest. She looked to Eldris and Falco, her eyes wide with worry. "Where is he?" she whispered. Falco shook his head. "I don't know, but if he doesn't show up soon, things could get even worse." Varen Kess seized the moment. "It seems that Jack is unavailable." "Convenient, isn't it?" he said, his voice carrying a tone of mock concern. "Without his testimony, we must proceed based on the evidence and witnesses we have." Jareth Cole stepped forward again. "Your Honor, Jack's testimony is crucial to this case. If we could wait for a bit." The judge frowned as her patience wore thin. "We will proceed. Mr. Kess, you may continue." Varen Kess' smirk grew wider. "Thank you, Your Honor." He turned back to the court. "I will now bring forward several witnesses who have first-hand accounts of Gustav's crimes." One by one, people took the stand, each recounting stories of destruction and chaos allegedly caused by Gustav. Each story was more damning than the last, and it was clear that many of these witnesses were either coerced or lying outright. However, there was little they could do about this. Angie could barely contain herself. She wanted to scream, to shout the truth, but she knew that any outburst could make things worse. Jareth Cole did his best to cross-examine the witnesses, poking holes in their stories and highlighting inconsistencies, but the damage was done. The jury, and the public watching the live broadcast, were swayed by the sheer volume of accusations. Varen Kess gave a final statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, It is clear that Gustav Crimson is a danger to our society. His refusal to submit to justice, his violent confrontations with our forces, and his attempts to destroy our very planet all point to one conclusion. He must be held accountable for his actions. Deep in space, a strange calm washed over Jack as he thought of a way out. He couldn't afford to waste time here. The trial was too important to miss. He needed to break free and fast. All right, he muttered to himself, let's see how much power you can really take. Drawing on the deepest reserves of his strength, Jack concentrated his energy on a single area. The air around him crackled with electricity as he suddenly burst forth with unprecedented energy. The tendrils tightened and strained, then began to tear under the pressure of absorbing way too much energy. The assailants watched in shock as Jack's aura expanded, growing more intense by the second. Impossible, the reptilian leader hissed, trying to reinforce the net. They began to feel the energy choke them as overbearing pressure swept across the surroundings from Jack's position. With a final, explosive burst of energy, Jack shattered the net, sending shards of energy flying in all directions. Chapter 1580 The Ritualistic Ploy. Chapter 1580 The Ritualistic Ploy. Author's note. Unedited chapter. Miss Amy's projection seemed to pause, as if considering her words carefully. I am right where I need to be, Gustav. My journey has led me to a place where I can best assist you from afar. We will see each other soon. Gustav's brow furrowed in concern. But why the secrecy? What's happening? Miss Amy's eyes softened. There are forces at play that require careful navigation. You must trust me, as you always have. Remain focused. Gustav nodded reluctantly. All right, Miss Amy. I just wish I knew more. Miss Amy's projection began to fade slightly, her form becoming more ethereal. You will, in time. For now, rest and regain your strength. You're almost there. Gustav watched as her projection vanished, leaving him alone in the chamber. He took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling over him. Despite her assurance, he still felt unease. He exited the chamber and made his way to the adjacent quarters where Stark was resting. The spacious room was filled with an array of food and comfortable seating areas. Stark looked up as Gustav entered, a concerned expression on his face. How did it go? Stark asked, setting aside a plate of fruit. Gustav sighed, collapsing into a chair. I'm getting closer. Miss Amy says I will be ready once I'm able to maintain it for up to 30 minutes. Stark nodded. You'll get there. Gustav leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Thanks, Stark. I appreciate the support. But there's something else bothering me. Miss Amy won't tell me where she is or why she's hiding. Stark frowned. I noticed that as well. Do you think something is up? Gustav's eyes narrowed. I am 100% sure something is up, but she doesn't want me to know. She did say we'll see each other soon, and that I just have to trust her. Stark leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Maybe you do. I mean, she is the most powerful person we know, right? Gustav nodded while rubbing his temples. That is true. The two friends settled into a companionable silence for a bit as Gustav closed his eyes. He let his mind drift, focusing on the connection between his soul, mental form, and body. He could still feel the echo of the golden body within him. Gustav found himself in the midst of a crumbling city, buildings shattered and fires raging all around. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds of ash and smoke. The air was thick with the stench of destruction and despair. Before him, Angie stood with her form half black and half white. Horns protruded from her forehead in a grotesque, upside-down fashion. Her eyes burned with an intensity that Gustav had never seen before. She was locked in a fierce battle with Jack, the world's most powerful mixed blood. Jack's aura radiated with pure, unbridled power that caused the world to tremble as he engaged her. With a swift and deadly motion, Angie suddenly severed Jack in two, her blade cutting through him like a knife through butter. At this moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as Jack's body fell to the ground in pieces, and an overwhelming sense of panic spread through the surroundings. The destruction around them intensified, and Gustav's heart pounded in his chest. Suddenly, Angie's eyes locked onto his, and she moved with lightning speed. Before Gustav could react, she was upon him and her blade pierced his chest. He felt a searing pain as the blade drove deep, and a black hole began to form around the wound, pulling everything into its abyss. Gustav suddenly jolted awake. His breath came in ragged gasps as he sat up. His body was covered in a cold sweat. He rarely had dreams, but whenever he did, it always felt so real. This time was more real than any other. He still felt a slight pain in his chest where the blow from Angie's blade had struck. He couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered. What kind of dream was that? He muttered to himself, trying to make sense of it. After a few moments of contemplation, Gustav decided to put the unsettling dream out of his mind and focus on his training. He needed to focus on his aim, sustaining the 3 in 1 golden body for 30 minutes. With renewed determination, he began his meditation. Meanwhile, in the cold expanse of outer space above Earth, Indrik, Eldris, and Falco piloted Gustav's spacecraft towards their home planet. The vessel cut through the void like a blade as its engines thrummed softly. The barrier around Earth solidified and visibly appeared at this moment as a transmission crackled through the ship's comm system. "This is MBO Space Control. Identify yourselves and prepare for a scan." "Understood," Eldris replied, his voice calm and steady. "This is the vessel belonging to Exploration Team F number 2110, carrying 3 passengers." Indrik adjusted his disguise, a holographic mask that altered his features. "We can't afford to be recognized, especially me," he said, his voice low. "They know I'm allied with Gustav, so we could be in serious trouble." Falco nodded. "Just stay calm and let Eldris handle the communications. We'll be fine." The ship was soon bathed in a soft blue light as it got scanned. A few tense moments passed as the MBO officers conducted their scan. Finally, the transmission resumed. "Scan complete. You are cleared for entry," the officer said. "Proceed to the designated landing zone." "Thank you, Control." "Proceeding now," Eldris responded. The spacecraft descended smoothly through the atmosphere, breaking through the cloud cover to reveal the sprawling cityscape below. They navigated towards the designated landing zone, a secure facility in the outskirts of Plankton City. As the ship touched down, Indrik adjusted his disguise once more, ensuring it was secure. "Let's hope this works," he muttered. The landing ramp lowered, and the trio stepped out into the bustling facility. MBO officers and personnel moved about, their attention focused on their duties. Eldris and Falco walked confidently, while Indrik did his best to blend in, his holographic disguise altering his appearance to that of an ordinary civilian. "Welcome back to Earth," an officer greeted them, his tone professional but friendly. "Please follow the protocols, and you'll be cleared to enter the city." They nodded and moved through the facility, following the necessary procedures. After a thorough check, they were given the green light to proceed. As they exited the facility, the city spread out before them. "Now what?" Falco asked, glancing at Eldris. "We need to regroup back at EES and figure out our next steps," Eldris replied. "We can't risk being seen too much, especially with Indrik's situation." Indrik nodded in agreement. "Let's move quickly." They navigated the vibrant, futuristic metropolis that thrived on the cutting edge of technology. Hovercars zipped through the air on designated pathways, and the sidewalks were bustling with citizens as well as holographic circles. Soon the trio finally arrived in front of a building. As they approached EES apartment, which was perched on the 120th floor of a sleek, glass-walled building, he could already sense their approach. He immediately welcomed them at the door with an expression of disbelief. "Falco, you little son of a gun, come here," he exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace his long-lost friend. Falco grinned, hugging E tightly. "It's good to see you too, E. It's been way too long." Eldris and Indrik watched with smiles on their faces as they reunited. Once inside, the group settled into the spacious living area, which boasted floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Plankton City. "Tell me everything," E said, his eyes filled with concern as he looked at all 3 of them. "Why are you back on Earth and without Gustav?" Eldris nodded with a serious expression. Ria's been captured by the Alliance Corps. They're using him as bait to lure Gustav out. EE's face fell. I am aware of that and trying to do something about it. He took a deep breath. You just missed Elevera. She left on an off-planet mission to find the true head of the Gustavo Alliance. Elevera's on a Gustavo Alliance-related mission? Indrik asked with an intrigued expression. EE nodded. She's following a lead that took her to the Outer Rim. She believes the real leader of the Gustavo Alliance might be hiding there. It's risky, but we're determined to find out the truth so we can finally clear Gustav of all charges. Falco's brow furrowed. But she might be a while, and it's just a lead, so it isn't guaranteed. We still need to figure out how to rescue Ria. A breakout might be our only option. E sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Things are tense between the Alliance and Earth right now. The MBO wanted to move Ria to Earth, but the Alliance refused. There are even rumors that the MBO might try to take Ria by force. Chapter 1581 How Could You Let This Happen? 1581 How Could You Let This Happen? Author's note. Unedited chapter. Some had weapons while others had activated their supernatural abilities, ready to face the group. Falco stepped forward as his body emanated a dark aura. Like hell we will. With a wave of his hand, Falco summoned tendrils of dark energy that lashed out towards the approaching guards. The tendrils smashed into the ground, causing the floor to crack and the guards to scatter. Indrik was already thinking ahead. We need to find another way out. There's no way we can fight all of them head-on. Eldris nodded. Open a vor. Before Eldris could complete his sentence, interrupted. I know where they took Ria. I can sense the link based on the spatial signature, so I know exactly where to open a vortex to. Announced. Does this mean we can still save him? Falco inquired. I don't know, but we can definitely get to him, answered. At the expense of us all getting caught. We need to leave now. Indrik stated with a tone of urgency. I don't want to leave him behind, Falco voiced with a defiant expression. Let's. Eldris was about to give a directive when more Alliance Corp members approached. Their paths were immediately barred as they got surrounded. Falco reacted the fastest by unleashing a wave of dark energy and sending several Corps members crashing into the barricades. The place immediately turned into a battlefield as they had no choice but to face the Corp members. Indrik waved his hand, causing a large rectangular prison to cleave in two and hurled it at some of the inermies. Bam! It rammed into a few who didn't evade quickly while others leapt over it. They made their way towards Indrik, while sending out a bunch of attacks which he raised telekinetic barriers to block. Eldris moved with precision as his eyes glowing, causing the surroundings to dim. The Corp members immediately felt their strength reduce and their sight disoriented as he sneaked behind one of them and sent a palm towards his back. Bang! The Corp member got sent flying with intensity while he moved out of the way to avoid a blazing chain that swept in his direction from another Alliance Corp member. Concentrated as he opened a swirling red vortexes behind powerful Corps members who had been causing trouble. They got sucked into it and reappeared in an entirely different location. A Corp member who had been using pyrokinesis managed to escape the tug and sent a jet of purple flames towards E. Snapped his finger, opening another vortex right at his blind spot. The flames got consumed and repaired directly above the member. As his purplish flames shot towards him from above, he jumped to the left and a vortex just happened to materialize into existence while he was in midair. Fuwum, the vortex consumed him, and charged forward upon noticing that Indrik had destroyed the invisible walls barricading them in place. That should buy us some time. The group pressed forward, but the number of Corps members seemed endless. Each enemy strength was nearly comparable to theirs. Some came close while a few fell short behind the others. The group's coordinate was second to none as they dispatched the Alliance Corps. Used his vortex to transport those who would take too long to defeat. Falco squared off against a trio of shifters, their bodies morphing into grotesque forms with enhanced strength. Falco created a massive dark claw that swept across the surroundings with intensity. Although Falco had dubbed down his strength by a lot to avoid some complications, it was still too much for some of the Alliance Corps members to handle. He left gashes across their bodies as he engaged with nimbleness, avoiding all of their attacks and dealing them with unavoidable blows. Indrik, meanwhile, faced off against a teleporter, a woman with striking blue skin and glowing white eyes. She blinked around him, delivering rapid blows that he struggled to deflect. Indrik's blink wasn't as quick as hers, and he would always find himself getting hit from blind spots. If it wasn't due to his telekinesis energy wrapped around his figure, she would have left him with a lot of damage. As he blinked to appear behind her, she blinked as well, appearing right behind him with a bat-like weapon swinging towards Indrik's head. Forhumsh, with a surge of telekinetic force, he managed to pin her against a wall, immobilizing her momentarily. We don't have time for this. Eldris found himself surrounded by enemies as well. One turned the entire surroundings into a sea of water that reached the very top. Every one of them immediately found themselves underwater and struggling to move. You got him. A corp member yelled as tendrils of water wrapped around Eldris. However, at this moment, Eldris suddenly summoned a palette of colors, and the sea became polluted. Even the conjurer couldn't see as it darkened immediately with all sorts of colors. Eldris immediately took control of the water, causing it to spread in every direction. Fuhum, it swept the enemies away, leaving only 4 of them in the middle. We can't go after Rhea. We need to get to the ship now. Indrik yelled. They all understood the gravity of the situation. If they didn't leave now, they risked getting trapped in here and eventually captured. Everyone, get in. Joined his inksid and middle finger together while twisting. A vortex instantly opened up. He wanted to get them straight to where their spacecraft was parked so they could leave. They jumped through the vortex, but instead of arriving at their intended destination, they found themselves in another part of the Alliance facility, completely surrounded by a new wave of core members. What the hell? How do we get here? Indrik questioned with a look of suspicion. Something's messing with the spatial energy here. It rerouted our travel, voiced with a look of disbelief. Damn it. Falco growled. We can't keep this up, Indrik panted. We need to find another way to leave. Before they could devise a new plan, an imposing figure emerged from the shadows. That is an Alliance leader. Axaroth. Indrik alerted the others with a look of concern. The alien before them, with an aura of immense power, had multiple limbs. He was tall and muscular, with skin that shimmered like polished metal and star-shaped patterns all over. His eyes shimmered with a gold glow as pressure spread from his every being. Good thing I just happened to be passing by. You've caused quite a disturbance, the leader said, his voice echoing with authority. But it all ends here. Axaroth raised a hand, and a wave of energy surged forward, ramming into the group and sending them sprawling. It almost seemed like their world had turned upside down at this moment. I didn't even get to see what hit them before it hit them. The person before them happened to be that much powerful. There was no doubt that he was on the level of an alpha-ranked mixed blood. Give up any thoughts of resistance or choose defy me, and see how painful the rewards of such insolence will be, Axaroth stated with unparalleled confidence and power. Falco and Eldris were the first to recover, but their next attacks were easily deflected by a powerful energy shield Axaroth constructed. He pushed forward and a booming light pierced through the walls, shooting across space. Indrik had only invaded by a few inches, or his head would have been disintegrated. Indrik focused his telekinesis energy to charge forward. This guy's too strong. Axaroth smiled coldly. You should have known better than to challenge the Alliance. Falco unleashed a concentrated blast of dark energy, aiming for the leader's head. But the attack was absorbed by the shield, and Axaroth retaliated with a beam of pure energy, striking Falco in the chest and knocking him sliding across the ground. Eldris attempted to use his ability to weaken the leader's attacks, but the sheer force of the energy being directed at them was too much. Created a series of vortexes to try and trap the leader, but each one was effortlessly dismantled. The surroundings soon echoed with the sounds of struggle and combat. The walls, once pristine, were now marred with scorch marks and blood, evidence of the intense battle that had been raging. Falco, Indrik, Eldris, and were soon cornered but unyielding. Their resolve remained unbroken even in the face of Axaroth with his terrifying aura of dominance. Axaroth's voice boomed through the chaos, a warning laced with menace. Resistance is futile. Surrender now. But the group was far from surrendering. Falco eyes burning with dark energy as he snarled, "Such arrogance! Bow to the sovereign of darkness." With a surge of power, he unleashed a torrent of dark energy that raced toward Axaroth. Axaroth's form flickered, vanishing and reappearing right in front of Falco with inhuman speed. "You're done," he said coldly, stabbing his 2 fingers into Falco's eyes. Pucci-eye blood spurted from his eyes as Falco screamed in agony. Chapter 1582 Your Decision. Chapter 1582 Your Decision. Author's note. Unedited chapter. The hood was deep and shadowy, obscuring the face beneath, but as the figure drew closer, the faint outline of a mask could be seen. The mask was an intricate piece of craftsmanship, carved from obsidian and adorned with swirling patterns that glowed with an inner crimson light. The eyes of the mask were hollow voids, emanating a chilling glow that pierced through the darkness. As the figure descended further, the masked eyes seemed to scan the surroundings, instilling dread in all who met their gaze. Lightning crackled around the figure, dancing in colors of deep purple and blue, creating an electrifying display that illuminated the courtroom with flashes of unnatural light. The sound of the crackling energy was deafening, and the air buzzed with its intensity. With a final, thunderous crash, the figure broke through the hall's ceiling, landing with a resounding impact that shook the entire building. The floor beneath its feet cracked and splintered, and a shockwave of energy rippled outward, causing those nearby to stumble and fall. The figure stood tall and menacing in the center of the courtroom, its presence commanding immediate attention and fear. The robe continued to flow around it, defying gravity and logic, while the mask's glowing eyes surveyed the chaos it had wrought. "The Gustavo Alliance has come to retrieve our god," the figure announced in a deep and resonant voice that echoed through the hall like a death knell. As it spoke, the lightning above intensified, casting a surreal, apocalyptic light over the scene. The entire hall erupted into chaos. Spectators screamed and scrambled for cover, and security personnel rushed forward to confront the intruder. But the figure raised its hands, summoning a barrier of lightning that repelled them with ease. "Futile," it declared with an air of absolute authority. "We will take back our god and leave this place. Any interference will be met with severe consequences." Angie, Falco, Ildris, and EE sprang into action. "We have to protect Gustav," Angie shouted, her voice filled with determination. Jareth Cole tried to maintain order. "Everyone, stay calm and remain in your seats." But the hooded figure's presence and proclamation had already thrown the courtroom into disarray. The Alliance panel members and the judge looked on in shock, their authority momentarily shattered by the sheer force of the intruder's arrival. Varenkess, seizing the moment, pointed at Gustav. "See? This is exactly what we've been talking about. Gustav Crimson is undeniably linked to the Gustavo Alliance." Jareth Cole retorted, "This is an orchestrated attempt to frame my client." In the midst of the pandemonium, the masked figure moved toward Gustav, who floated unconscious in the containment tube. "Our god must awaken," the figure intoned. Angie lunged forward, trying to stop the intruder. "No. You can't take him." Swove, her speed was still a far cry from its original level, but no normal person would be able to follow it. She had been the fastest to react to the intruder. "Unfortunately, Pa." The figure swatted her away with a wave of its hand, sending her crashing into the wall in the distance. "Do not interfere. It's that guy from before." Indrik recalled the Gustavo Alliance member they battled with on the planet where Gustav's spacecraft underwent repair. Falco summoned a wave of dark energy, directing it at the intruder. "Get away from him," he roared. The masked figure turned, raising a barrier to deflect the attack. "Meaningless. Haven't we done this before? You are all mere mortals. You cannot stop the will of the Gustavo Alliance." Varenkess continued to use the chaos to his advantage. "Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to see the truth. Gustav Crimson is the leader of this terror. Jareth Cole, undeterred, shouted back, "This is a staged attack. Do not be deceived. Be reduced to ash, all those who would slander our God." The figure voiced out while pointing at the prosecutor. The prosecutor's eyes widened in terror as a powerful lightning bolt descended from the skies above. Outside the courtroom, the media scrambled to report on the unprecedented events. The cut live feeds only fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. The world watched in horror and fascination, unaware of the true stakes within the hall. Thrara. After the powerful lightning descended, the courthouse became a scene of utter chaos. Dust and debris filled the air, and the sound of shouts reverberated through the vast hall. Everyone had expected the prosecutor to be reduced to ash, but when the dust died down, Jack could be seen in the initial position of the prosecutor. Meanwhile, the prosecutor was in an entirely different position. Jack stood poised, ready to confront the unexpected guest who had descended from the crack in the sky. The figure, cloaked in dark robes and a menacing mask, seemed unfazed by the feat Jack had just displayed. More figures began to emerge from the crack above, each one draped in robes bearing the Gustavo Alliance sigil. They descended with an eerie fluidity, surrounding Jack and positioning themselves around Gustav's containment tube. The atmosphere grew tense, the air thick with impending violence. Jack's presence spread wide, releasing an aura of power and authority. "Only one will be left alive when I am done with you lots," he declared, his voice resonating with an unyielding threat. The Gustavo Alliance members showed no fear. Their resolve remained unwavering as they tightened their circle around Jack. Several moved closer to Gustav's tube, ready to make contact and take him away. The tension reached a fever pitch, and it seemed like the situation was about to explode into a full-blown battle. Just as a member of the Gustavo Alliance reached out to touch the tube, a blinding golden light erupted from within. Gustav's body turned a radiant gold, emitting a powerful blast of energy that swept across the hall. The closest person was sent flying, crashing into the far wall with a sickening thud. Others around Gustav were thrown back, their bodies slamming into the crumbling walls of the hall. The sheer force of the blast caused the walls of the courthouse to crack and crumble, sending chunks of stone and metal raining down. The entire structure groaned under the strain, and the once grand hall was reduced to a scene of utter devastation. Amidst the rubble, Gustav floated in place. His 3-in-1 golden body was activated, he radiating with an aura of unmatched power and authority. "Quiet down," Gustav's voice boomed, not just in the hall but across the entire earth. Every living being heard his command in their minds, a voice that brooked no disobedience. The chaos halted, and a stunned silence fell over the scene. Even the most hardened warriors of the Gustavo Alliance were left in awe, their confidence shaken by the display of raw power before them. The hall was stoked with powerful figures, ranging from MBO officers to the alien spectators to the Alliance leaders, and yet not a single one of them could deny the chill that permeated their bodies. "It is time I reminded you lot of who you are dealing with," Gustav's voice echoed, carrying a weight that demanded absolute attention. Jack, though prepared for battle, couldn't help but be impressed by the sudden turn of events. He stepped back, allowing Gustav to take center stage. The members of the Gustavo Alliance hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their eyes as they faced the radiant figure before them. Gustav surveyed the scene with a mix of amusement and disdain. "You really had the audacity to hold a trial for me while I was unconscious, unable to participate in my own defense?" Gustav's voice was calm but carried a steely edge. One of the Alliance leaders sitting behind the judges, a stern-faced woman with crystalline eyes, stood and addressed him. "There is nothing wrong with proceeding so long as you were present, even in an unconscious state." Gustav's laughter rang out, deep and resonant, shaking the very ground beneath them. The earth trembled as if sharing in his mirth. His grim expressions on the faces of everyone in the surroundings increased the longer he laughed. The prosecutor, seizing the moment, attempted to regain control. "You see, Your Honors, this is precisely the kind of behavior we are dealing with." Gustav is unpredictable, unstable, and dangerous. He uses his power recklessly. Before he could continue, Gustav raised a hand, and a wave of pinkish-red energy swept across the entire earth. The energy radiated from him in powerful surges, enveloping every living being. Instantly, everyone fell to their knees. Their wills were overwhelmed by the force of Gustav's cosmic superiority. "I will speak, and you will all listen." Gustav's voice echoed across the globe, resonating in the minds of every creature, human and alien alike. Silence fell over the courtroom, the only sound being the faint vibration of Gustav's energy. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his tone grave and contemplative. "You accuse me of heinous crimes, yet you fail to see the truth. I am not a good person. I have never claimed to be. Most of the acts I performed were not out of some misguided sense of heroism. No, they were for the handful of beings in this vast universe who mean something to me." Chapter 1583 You Are Weak. Chapter 1583 You Are Weak. Author's note. Unedited chapter. The courtroom still lay in ruins due to the cosmic power that had been unleashed within. Debris and rubble were strewn across the floor with scorched patches marked in Gustav's position. Despite the destruction, a sense of awe permeated the air. Spectators ranging from MBO officers to aliens, important dignitaries to alliance leaders, all stood in silent reverence, their gazes fixed on the central figure who made the entire world freeze. In the midst of this chaotic scene, Gustav stood with his arm wrapped protectively around Angie. After a moment of stunned silence, the judge regained her composure and raised the gavel. Her voice, though trembling slightly, carried the weight of finality. "In light of the evidence and the actions witnessed here today, I declare Gustav Crimson innocent of all charges." The sound of the gavel striking the surface echoed through the courtroom, a signal that justice had been served. MBO officers moved swiftly with looks of urgency as they began to cater to the tied-up Gustavo Alliance members on the ground. The Gustavo Alliance members, once a formidable threat, were now powerless. Their supernatural abilities had been rendered useless by the cosmic bindings. As the officers escorted them away, three familiar figures made their way through the wreckage toward Gustav. Falco, E, and Eldris approached, their faces lighting up with relief and joy. The sight of their friend, victorious and vindicated, brought a warmth to their hearts. E was the first to reach Gustav, throwing his arms around him in a bear hug. "Gustav, you did it. You're finally free." Gustav laughed, the sound rich and full of life. It's good to see you're alive." E clapped Gustav on the back with a wide grin on his face. "You were amazing out there, man. I've never seen anything like that before. You really showed them." Eldris nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting admiration. "You've always been strong, Gustav, but today, you were unstoppable. Are you truly the strongest now?" Falco was still in disbelief, even though he was very happy about how it all turned out. Gustav smiled in gratitude for his friends. "You guys are the best. I am aware of everything you did while I was out. Your support means everything." As they shared a hearty reunion, laughter and light-hearted banter filled the air. The tension that had gripped the courtroom melted away, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and relief. It was a moment of triumph. Gustav's expression grew serious as he turned to face the Alliance leaders, who had been watching the reunion with mixed emotions. "There's something else that needs to be done," he said, his voice firm. "Rhea needs to be freed. He's been held captive for too long. I am sure you know what will happen if I decide to head there myself." Leader 2's piercing blue eyes remained imposing as he responded. "We promise, Gustav. We will ensure that Rhea is released as soon as possible." Gustav nodded with a steady gaze. "See that it's done. No one ever spoke to the Alliance or world leaders this way. Not even Jack." So this sight was quite shocking, but seeing how Gustav had proclaimed he was now the most powerful on Earth, it made sense for him not to cower to anyone. With that assurance, the tension between Gustav and the Alliance leaders eased slightly. They had witnessed his power, and now they saw his resolve to protect those he cared about. They couldn't truly gauge Gustav's strength, but someone who was able to bring every single person on Earth to their knees wasn't someone that be trifled with. Amid the ruins, Angie turned to Gustav with love and affection gleaming in her eyes. "I'm glad you're okay, Gustav. I've missed you." He looked at her as his heart overflowed with warmth. "I have missed you too, Angie. It's been a really long year without you." Without another word, they leaned into each other, sharing a passionate kiss. Their lips entangled as they softly puckered away with Gustav's arms wrapping around Angie's waist. She wrapped her arms around his neck and glued to his body tightly as the world behind them faded in this passionate moment. It was a kiss filled with all the emotions they had kept bottled up: relief, love, and the promise of a future they would face together. Falco, and Eldris exchanged knowing smiles, their hearts warmed by the sight of their friend's happiness. The courtroom, though still in disarray, felt a little brighter, a little more hopeful. As the kiss ended, Gustav and Angie remained close, their foreheads touching. "What now?" she whispered with a soft tone. Gustav took a deep breath as his gaze swept over the gathered crowd. "There's a lot to do, but the problems of the universe can wait. Let's spend some time together first." The sun was starting to set, and the sky painted itself in hues of orange and pink. Gustav and the others gathered outside the courthouse. Falco looked up at the sky. "You know, after all this, I think we deserve a break." He chuckled. "A break sounds good. Maybe a little vacation? Somewhere far away from cosmic battles and courtroom drama." Eldris nodded thoughtfully. "We should take some time to rest and recharge. But we also need to stay vigilant." Gustav smiled at his friends, grateful for their unwavering support. "A break sounds perfect. We've earned it." The scene outside the courthouse was one of chaos giving way to celebration. Spectators, dignitaries, and MBO officers were milling about, talking in hushed, excited tones, all eyes occasionally darting to Gustav and his friends as they stood together, basking in the aftermath of their victory. Endrik, who had been watching everything from the top of a high-rise building in the distance, decided it was time to move. With a leap, he launched himself off the building. Fuhum, his body traveled in an elongated arc as he flew over multiple buildings lined up across the city. He proceeded to blink in midair and vanished from sight. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared right before Gustav and the others, landing with a light thud. "Big brother." Endrik's voice rang out with a mixture of joy and relief as he rushed forward. Gustav turned just in time to catch his younger brother in a tight embrace. "Hey, kiddo," he exclaimed with a voice filled with warmth. They held each other close, their bond as brothers reaffirmed in that heartfelt moment. "It's good to see you," Gustav said, pulling back slightly to look at him. Endrik's eyes sparkled with happiness. "I'm so glad you're safe and finally free of all charges." It wasn't long before others began to join the group. Matilda approached, her eyes bright with emotion as she took in the sight of her friends. "Matilda!" Angie exclaimed while rushing forward to hug her. Matilda embraced Angie tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Angie, it's been too long," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I thought I'd never see you again." Angie held her friend close, her own tears flowing freely. "I'm here now, and so are you. Although a lot has happened, it all worked out." As the emotional reunion continued, he couldn't resist lightening the mood. "You know, Gustav," he said with a mischievous grin, "you must have been so horny since Angie vanished. Must have been a long, dry spell for you. Did you make use of your left hand?" "That's wild, man." Gustav gave a light jab while laughter erupted from the group. The tension of the past days that Gustav's trial had brought was melting away in this moment. Even Gustav, who rarely indulged in such jokes, couldn't help but chuckle. Gustav shook his head with a smile. "But you're right. Having Angie back is more than I could have hoped for." As the laughter subsided, the gathering grew even larger. Empress Daria, the elder from planet Orion, Ozius natives, the former alien child slave, and other witnesses who had testified to Gustav's innocence began to huddle around him. Their expressions were filled with gratitude and admiration. Empress Daria stepped forward with a friendly but authoritative bearing. Gustav, she said with a melodic tone. Your actions in the past have saved not just yourself but countless others. You have my deepest thanks. The people of Abrukes will forever be grateful. Gustav nodded with a light smile. Thank you, Empress Daria. Your support and testimony were invaluable. I truly appreciate it. The elder from planet Orion, a wizened being with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages, nodded in agreement. You have done great things, Gustav. We are honored to have stood by you. The alien child, with wide, curious eyes and a shy smile, approached and tugged at Gustav's sleeve. Thank you once again, mister, the child said in a small voice. Eloisa is free because of you. You made the bad people go away. Gustav squatted, meeting the child's gaze. You're welcome, he said gently. I'm glad I could help. Chapter 1584 Unfortunate Situation. Chapter 1584 Unfortunate Situation. Author's note. Unedited chapter. In cities around the world, people gathered in community centers, schools, and libraries, discussing potential candidates and casting their votes. The energy was electric, a sense of hope and possibility infusing the air. Gustav sat in his penthouse, the holographic interface before him displaying a live feed of the nominations and votes. He and the team he had set up pored over the data, identifying individuals who received strong public support. Look at this, said one of his advisors, pointing to a name on the screen. Dr. Patel Martinez, a leading expert in renewable energy. She's been nominated by thousands of people. She seems like the kind of person we need, Gustav agreed. Let's add her to the shortlist, but I'll interrogate her myself later. As the days passed, the shortlist grew longer. There were doctors, scientists, educators, social workers, and activists from all corners of the globe. Each had a proven track record of dedication and service to humanity. To EE's surprise, he was also included in the list. He didn't expect it, but he already had a lot of votes from people, which quite surprised him as he didn't deem himself popular. What EE didn't count was the many missions he had gone on and how he usually engaged people in conversations. He was always heartily willing to help others, and a lot of people both within and outside the MBO knew how easygoing he was. One evening, Gustav sat down with Indrik and EE to review the final list of potential council members. These are some incredible people, EE remarked while scrolling through the list. It's amazing to see how many talented and compassionate individuals are out there. Gustav nodded. Unlike myself, this council has to be made up of people who genuinely want to make a difference. The next day, Gustav stood in the grand hall of the temporary headquarters for the newly formed independent council. The room was spacious and modern, filled with natural light streaming through large windows. The atmosphere was a bit tense as the final round of candidate interviews was about to begin. He was flanked by a team of advisors, each one meticulously selected for their expertise in various fields. They had spent days sifting through the nominations, narrowing down the list to the most promising individuals. Today, Gustav would use his keen perception and ability to read others to interrogate the remaining candidates and finalize the council. As the first candidate stepped forward, Gustav gave a reassuring nod to his team. Let's get started, he said with a calm but authoritative tone. The candidate was a middle-aged woman with a background in environmental science. She introduced herself confidently, her passion for sustainable development evident in her every word. Gustav listened intently, his sharp eyes catching every nuance of her demeanor. Dr. Patel, what do you see as the biggest challenge in implementing a mandate that wouldn't discriminate against those with low-graded bloodline that have the capacity to work well in such fields? Gustav asked, leaning forward slightly. Dr. Patel took a deep breath before answering. The biggest challenge will be the political will and how to keep them safe when they engage in such energy research. The government might still be against it, so it will definitely require a lot of convincing to pass the bill. But I believe that's why we're here. We can really be the ones to make a difference. Gustav nodded, pleased with her answer. He could sense her sincerity and commitment. Thank you, Dr. Patel. We'll be in touch. The next candidate was a young social worker named Aisha Kamara, who had been instrumental in several grassroots movements for education reform. Her eyes sparkled with determination as she spoke. Gustav, I believe education is a major key to implementing and breaking a long cycle of unwarranted biases, Aisha said passionately. If we can ensure that the children mentality is correct before they grow, we can avoid a lot of situations currently at play now. We can transform communities from the ground up since the society plays a huge part in grooming the personality of a child. Gustav smiled. I agree, Aisha. What specific policies would you propose to make this a reality? Aisha outlined a detailed plan, focusing on careful implemented teacher training and community involvement. One by one, the candidates came forward, each bringing their unique perspectives and expertise. Gustav's high perception allowed him to discern their true intentions, picking up on subtle cues that revealed their character. He weeded out those who seemed more interested in power than in serving the people, focusing instead on those whose hearts were truly in the right place. Among the candidates was E, of course. He didn't need to interrogate E. He knew exactly where his friend stood. E's sense of justice and unwavering loyalty made him an obvious choice for the council. No matter how biased it may seem, Gustav wanted someone from his friend group to be amongst the candidates. If E hadn't made the cut originally, he would have put Eldris in. After hours of rigorous interviews, Gustav and his team had their final list. 30 council members, each one vetted and chosen for their dedication, integrity, and expertise. Gustav stood before the gathered candidates. Congratulations to each of you. You have been chosen not just for your skills, but for your commitment to changing the world. Together, we will usher in a new era. The news of the council members' selection spread like wildfire. Media outlets around the globe reported on the historic event, highlighting the diverse backgrounds and expertise of the chosen individuals. The public response was overwhelmingly positive, with people expressing renewed hope for the future. They met in midair multiple times with thunderous clashes. The force of their blow caused a shockwave that rippled through the atmosphere, shaking the nearby buildings. They landed on the rooftop of a deserted skyscraper, the ground beneath them cracking from the impact. Without a word, they continued exchanging powerful blows as their fists collided with enough force to create sonic booms. Chapter 1585, Take It Back. Chapter 1585, Take It Back. Author's note. Unedited chapter. The morning sky over Elysium Prime was filled with the strange glows and mounting shadows as numerous massive Tark spacecraft hovered in the outer atmosphere. Their presence had not yet breached Earth's barrier, but the sight alone was enough to throw the world into chaos. On the ground, MBO forces scrambled to organize a response, mobilizing troops and resources with unprecedented speed. In the luxurious resort where Gustav and his friends were staying, a sense of urgency permeated the air. Gustav, Angie, E, Falco, Ildris, Indrik, Ria, and the rest of their group converged in the corridor. Their looks displayed confusion and concern. The corridor was already crowded with guests and staff, all whispering anxiously among themselves with some trying to get out. What's going on? Falco asked, looking around at the sea of worried faces. Why are there so many ships up there? I don't know, E replied as his brow furrowed. But whatever it is, it can't be good. Suddenly, a loud, booming announcement echoed across the entire planet. The voice was deep and commanding, reverberating through the air and capturing everyone's attention. It was coming from the Tark spacecraft. We are the Tark's force. We have come to retrieve Gustav Crimson before any form of prosecution. Release him to us immediately, or we will declare war on Earth. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the announcement continued. Gustav Crimson is to be handed over to the Tark's force at once. Failure to comply will result in immediate hostilities. Gustav's eyes widened as he recognized the voice. Commander Urgril, the Tark's force commander he had met during his visit to Goha-Tark and the Tark-owned galaxy. Urgril had been a key figure in Gustav's journey, providing him with a spacecraft and essential supplies, as well as revealing crucial information about his past and the existence of the other time candidate. A slow smile spread across Gustav's face as he understood what was happening. The Tarks had come to stop his trial, but they had arrived days after it had ended. They had assumed the worst, believing that the trial wouldn't go in Gustav's favor, and were now trying to save him. Angie noticed Gustav's smile and nudged him. "Gustav, do you know what's going on?" Gustav nodded, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Yes, Angie. The Tarks are here to rescue me. They thought I was still on trial and that things wouldn't end well." "Oh, it's that old dude," Indrik voiced upon recalling. Falco raised an eyebrow. "You know these guys?" Gustav chuckled. "Yes, I do. Commander Ergril is an old acquaintance. He helped Indrik and I a lot when we visited Goha Tark." He shook his head in disbelief. "Only you, Gustav. Only you would have alien friends showing up to rescue you." The announcement continued to play across the planet, the Tark's ultimatum sending shockwaves through the global population. People were scared and confused, unsure of what to make of this sudden threat. Gustav turned to everyone. "I need to go up there and talk to them. They don't know that the trial is over and that I was cleared of all charges." Angie grabbed his arm, her eyes filled with concern. "Be careful, Gustav. We don't know what will happen." Gustav squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We'll be fine. I just need to explain the situation to Ergril. He'll understand." Immediately after saying that, he vanished from the resort and reappeared high in Earth's upper atmosphere. The blue planet below and the dark void of space above framed the scene. Before him, numerous large spacecraft hovered ominously, each emblazoned with the Tark bull-headed sigil. These colossal ships lined up in a formation that spoke of military precision and readiness for battle. Such a sight would have been terrifying to the average person, especially if they were aware that the Tarks weren't under the Alliance and ran things in their galaxy under a solo authority. It turned out that Gustav's presence wasn't the only one in the upper atmosphere. Many MBO aircraft had risen to meet the perceived threat. The tension had risen to great heights, and it was clear that both sides were mere moments away from clashing. Gustav raised his hand, a signal to the MBO forces to hold their positions. "Commander Ergril, this is Gustav Crimson. I am safe, and I request an audience with you immediately. There is no need for hostility." His voice, amplified by his immense power, boomed across the atmosphere and echoed down to Earth below, effortlessly reaching every corner of the planet. The MBO forces recognized Gustav's command and hesitated but held their positions. However, within the Tark spacecraft, suspicions ran high. The Tarks, known for their caution and strategic thinking, were not easily swayed. They found it difficult to believe that Earth would simply hand over Gustav without a fight. Whispers of him being an imposter spread quickly among the Tark soldiers. In the command center of the lead Tark ship, soldiers turned to Commander Ergril for guidance. "Commander, what are your orders? Could this be a trick?" Ergril's stern face was etched with lines of concern as he pondered the situation. He knew Gustav well, but the stakes were too high to take any chances. "Prepare to engage," he ordered, his voice firm. "If this is an imposter, we will expose him. If not, we will deal with the consequences." The Tark's ships powered up their weapons, and within moments, a fierce battle erupted. Beams of energy and projectiles crisscrossed the space between the MBO and Tark forces, turning the serene upper atmosphere into a chaotic war zone. The numerous MBO aircraft, agile and equipped with the latest technology, maneuvered expertly, returning fire with equal ferocity. Gustav, positioned at the heart of the conflict, tried desperately to intervene. A beam fired towards him, but with a wave of his hand, he easily deflected it. He proceeded to move with blinding speed as he intercepted attacks from both sides, trying to prevent damage and casualties. His voice rang out amidst the chaos, "Stop this at once." But his words fell on deaf ears. The Tarks, convinced they were facing a clever ruse, continued their assault, demanding, "Where is the real Gustav? We will not be deceived." Tark soldiers flew out of their spacecraft with all sort of powerful weapons in grasp and supernatural abilities activated. The same happened with MBO officers as the battle moved on to the next level. The battle intensified, with supernatural abilities and high technology clashing. Boom, boom. Explosions lit up the sky, and the shockwaves could be felt miles away. Realizing that mere words would not suffice, Gustav decided to unleash a fraction of his true power. His eyes emitted a pinkish-red glow as a crimson cross appeared in his pupils. Unleashing his cosmic superiority Yarki, an unfathomable energy radiated outward in a limited scale. The effect was immediate and overwhelming, sweeping across the entire surroundings. Everyone immediately froze in their tracks. "Cease this madness now, or I will destroy everyone," Gustav's voice boomed, carrying the weight of absolute power. The declaration hung in the air, a promise of annihilation that none could ignore. The fighting stopped instantly. MBO pilots and Tark soldiers alike found themselves immobilized, their weapons and abilities rendered useless by the oppressive force of Gustav's Yarki. Gustav hadn't even decided to stop their body motor functions. He simply threatened them and decided he would take further actions if they chose to disobey, but fortunately, it got to them. Commander Urgrel, sensing the undeniable truth in Gustav's power, ordered his soldiers to stand down. "It is him," Urgrel said in awe. "This is the real outworldly, our savior." The tension began to dissipate as the Tarks retracted their weapons and the MBO forces lowered their defenses. Gustav allowed his Yarki to fade, though its presence lingered. He floated towards the lead Tark ship with unbridled confidence. As he approached, a hatch opened, and a transport beam enveloped him, bringing him aboard. The interior of the ship was as impressive as its exterior, with advanced technology and tactical displays lining the walls. Gustav was escorted to the command center where Commander Urgrel awaited. "Our savior," Urgrel greeted him with a respectful bow. "I apologize for the confrontation. We acted out of concern for your safety." Gustav shook his head with a light smile. "No need to apologize, Commander. I appreciate your efforts to protect me even though you arrived quite late. The trial was concluded days ago, and I was found innocent." Urgrel's eyes widened in surprise. "Is that so?" "We feared the worst and came to intervene." Gustav nodded. "Yes, and I am grateful for your concern. But there's no need for further hostilities. Earth's people are already on edge." Urgrel sighed, visibly relieved. "Understood. We will withdraw our forces immediately and issue a formal apology to Earth." Turning to his communication officer, Urgrel gave the order. Moments later, the Tark's new message was broadcast across the planet. "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.